Alright, welcome everybody to my test world. As you may know, I recently released a video about cursed belt weaving, belt tapestry and even infinite storage exploits. And as a result of that video, I made this blueprint book, which contains all of the blueprints we saw in the video in the first book. This is basically a collection of all the things we covered in the video, as well as some new things in there as well. Like this one, we'll go over that in a little bit. And then all of the other books in here are dedicated to a single type of orthogonal belt weave, ranging from 4.4 belts per tile all the way up to the current best of 4.756 belts per tile. Now, having the highest storage density possible is nice, but there are also other things to consider when building one of those. So it doesn't mean that the other books are useless just because this has the highest number on it. For example, this 4.4 belts per tile center is pretty small. It has a 10 by 10 tile tileable center, so that makes it quite flexible in terms of the ultimate size you want to build it. It's easier to fit in this in a location with limited space than, for instance, this one, which is 20 by 20 tiles, or these which have a more weird tileable section of 48 or 46 by 10. So there's those things to consider as well. We've also got this design, which basically is different than the others. It's basically three of the horizontal belt weaves seen in the video next to each other, but hooked up in such a way that it has 4 green belts of throughput without ever getting slowed down. So it has a full 4 green belts of throughput, which is nice. If you're looking for a balance between storage density and actual throughput, then this might be the design for you. Right, we'll go over all the books in details a little bit later. I'll quickly go over one of them before we head into the blueprint seen in the video. So if you want to use any of these books, I suggest you don't just use the main book, but you take the book out of here, put it on your hotbar, and that way you can just cycle through the blueprints which are in there. If we take a look in the blueprint book over here, we can see it has the tileable center, some information on how to use it, but in general they're all the same. It has a top left, top right, bottom left, bottom right corner, and then a top, bottom, left and right section, as well as some pre-builds in there, and a credit to the original designer or creator of the blueprint that is in here as well. So I chose the 4.4 belts per tile because it's the smallest, which makes it a little bit more clear what's going on. So let's say we are going to tile this 3 wide and 2 tall, because we are looking at this video in landscape mode. Then we just scroll to the top left one, put the top left on there, the top right, the bottom left, the bottom right, and then we have a tileable top section, tileable bottom section, and as you can see, these all have a 2 by 2 tile overlay, so they can only be placed in the correct place. If you try to place them otherwise, you cannot. So that's kind of a safety mechanic, so that you don't misplace any of these. For instance, I cannot place it here, I cannot place it out here, but I can only place it where it should go and then drag it down. Now it is complete, let's speed it up a bit so that the shiny sign specs go brrr on the belts. As you can see, another advantage of this design, even though it has less storage capacity, is that it does not mix up the belts, whereas some of the other ones do. So for instance, you can use this for ammo on your ship. You can put explosive rockets, railgun shells and yellow ammo on here, for instance. And it will not get mixed up, and you can store all 3 of them and lead them out to your turrets after as sort of a ammo storage. So that is one use case for this specific setup, I think. Anyway, let's slow down time again. Right, so even though this has a 4.4 belts per tile tileable center, it doesn't mean the overall storage capacity is 4.4 belts per tile, because the orthogonal designs have quite a bit of overhead, which does not have as many belts per tile. That is where the pre-built designs come in. Each of those have like a description where I measured the storage density of the build in this size. So if we look at the smallest one, which is not really, let's look at the 2 by 2 one at least. That has a sort of a similar size to the other ones. This has 3.0 belts per tile storage, even though the center is 4.4 belts per tile. We are storing 18,900 items on 780 tiles about. And even if we look into the higher density ones, let's take the highest one over here. The 1x1 design has only 3 belts per tile, even though this is the best design we have at 4.756 belts per tile. If we then look at a 2x2 copy, we are at 3.6 belts per tile, but we're already storing 80,000 items. Now, my original design in the video was just a horizontal belt weave, and that actually has 3.4 belts per tile from the get-go. It doesn't matter if you store like this amount of belts or this amount of belts, or even just a single belt. The storage density will be 3.4 belts per tile, no matter how many belts you use. There is no extra overhead except for the corners, which are just present in every single line. So there is no diminishing overhead, the overhead is constant from the start. The tileable center here has a storage capacity of 4 belts per tile, but the overhead diminishes it to 3.4, and it stays 3.4 regardless of the size. So that's the advantage the one-dimensional belt has over the orthogonal ones. And actually, now let's go into my own blueprint book right now. As I said, I should put it on the bar over here. So I made one which has a 50,000 item storage capacity, which is this amount of belts. And this is basically, until this storage size, the horizontal design beats any orthogonal design so far, even the 4.7 something belts per tile, because it has no extra overhead. Now, if we make 4 copies of this, you get into the kind of size that I used on my spaceship. I had slightly over 200,000 item storage on there. And at this point, the orthogonal ones definitely will have better storage per tile available. For instance, if we take the 3x3 design from the best blueprint book we've got available, you can see it has a storage density of 3.93 belts per tile, which is like 4 asteroids per tile more, which is like a whole 4 asteroids per tile more than the design I used on the flashlight spaceship. So at these kinds of sizes, the orthogonal ones definitely start winning out. Alright, let's take a look at the other designs which are in here. So I did put my spaceship in here as mentioned, because a lot of people were asking for it in the comments. So just get the blueprint book off Discord and you will have access to the spaceship as well. You also can find a save game on my Discord, by the way, which has the ship pre-built and ready to go from Norvis to start your own journey to the Shattered Planet. You can grab that one as well. We've got the storage which is actually used on the spaceship, so we've got the tileable one here as well. You can make this any size. You can even add a single line by just flipping the blueprint horizontally, and you can add a single line. But if you just drag it up, it tiles by 2 lines. Then we got the size that is actually used on the spaceship, which is this size, including how I weaved in the 2 belts of asteroids coming in over the 4 belts down here. Then we've got the quad woven railgun defense, which is the defense I used on my ship. So basically 8 assemblers outputting on 4 different belts, and the railguns take it off in the fronter. I kept the filters on the railguns, which worked well for me. So the railguns don't fight as much over who gets to shoot which target. There already is a better design out there in terms of maximum distance when you just take off the end of the belt with inserters. So the design I used for that was this one, which spans 32 tiles. Then J. Mangel wrote a script and he found you can just simply put 1 belt tile between these 2 and stretch it out 1 tile. So that was 34, and then it turned out you can, if you do that, you can still put a green one in here, and then you can stretch it out all the way to 36 tiles of a gap. So that means we now have a longer setup available for my railgun storage, which is 2 tiles longer than the one we had, because it adds the yellow belt and the 2 green belts, but it loses the gap. And on my spaceship I put like a belt of rockets through this gap. Alright, then we got my original orthogonal design in here, which had an average of 4.3333 belts per tile in the center. It's actually not true for this one, it diminishes down to 4.333 belts per tile if you use infinite copies. It has 4 horizontal and 3 vertical belt weaves, which leads to a very cool 7 belts per tile going through some of these tiles over here. I've made this one tileable as well, and then it starts to go down to 4.33333 belts per tile, because you need those connectors in the middle, which don't have any horizontal belt weaving in them, so they slightly diminish from the overall total. So to build this, you just tile as many copies of the orthogonal center that you want. Then you put the connectors in between. Those tile as well. And then we just have a top. This one does not overlap. And a bottom, and that's it. That's everything you need. And now all the science packs will start filling the belts. Again, only one type of item can go in here because the belts are gonna get mixed up in the lower corner. It's a function of having a different number of horizontals compared to verticals. Then you have basically no choice but to either mix it up or just have one belt pass down the bottom over here. But yeah, this one is an example of how you could use it. Here we just put a single field down. It has like 50-ish thousand items on there, and then we feed that into a quadruple belt wove up to the north again, where it then goes to two of these science assemblers. For instance, that is one way you could use this. Right, I almost forgot about this one. This is an upgrade to the infinite storage exploit, which gives us 10,000 asteroids stored per click. That's clickbait. It's not per click, it's per drag, I suppose. If we look on the mouse over, we can see there's currently 201,000 items in these 16 Prometheum science assemblers, roughly 12,000 per assembler. So if I now copy batteries on this and put back the science recipe, all of these inserters will go crazy inserting new chunks in there, and it can take a while actually, because, well, we cannot really see it. We can see it in the mouse over. They're inserting way more than 100 Prometheum asteroid chunks per time, because in the original video I said they would insert 100, but they don't. The amount of recipes or the amount of stuff they insert is dependent on the speed of the machines, and I've upgraded to legendary machines with legendary modules, legendary beacons, and the speed of each of these machines is now, all of these machines now have a crafting speed of 109. So the inserters insert 675 asteroids per cryogenic plant, which leads to an increase of more than 10,000 asteroids per time that I set and reset the recipe. As you can see, we're already over 210k. Alright, so we ended up at 211k, 211,887 to be precise. So let's check once more. And here we end up at 222,701. So that's over 10,000 asteroids stored in a single click and drag. Two single click and drags with a small gap in the middle. Technicalities. Anyway, we then output the asteroids from the output slots with an inserter onto a belt. It takes them from over here. And it leads those to the two actual Prometheum science assemblers, which are located in the front over here. It's a proof of concept. I didn't actually build it yet, but there you have it. 10,000 asteroids stored in a single action, basically. Alright, and then the final thing I put in here is the OG checkerboard pattern, which has a 4 belts per tile center. It uses only 2 colors and it is tileable in sections of 8 by 8, so that is very flexible. It also keeps 2 items on 2 separate belts. I've just made a tileable blueprint for this one as well, so you can basically connector into the bottom left, feed in, feed out. Here I didn't do the overlap, but yeah, you can make this one as well. This one has the advantage that it looks the nicest. I think this one looks the nicest out of all of the blueprints. Let's actually put down a copy of all of them. Alright, so I've laid out a copy of all of the variants in the book. This is the original horizontal belt weave. We've got the original 7 belts per tile, in some places orthogonal belt weave. We've got the OG checkerboard pattern, which looks kinda nice. Then we got the 4.4 belts per tile with the lights in the center. We are counting the tiles with the lights for that. But of course you could put laser turrets in there for some extra biter safety. We've got the 4.5 belt per tile pattern without gaps. And then we've got the results from the people who have written scripts, which are just searching in a 46 or 48 by 10 area. We will take a closer look at how that exactly works, but this is the design of 4.666. Here we got 4.729, and then here we've got 4.756, if I remember correctly. And this one would have been 4.8 if this last little gap could have been filled in with another vertical belt, but unfortunately it cannot, at least not if infinitely repeated. And then we've got the design with the triple adjacent horizontal belt weaves, which is pretty cool. It takes in 4 green belts and puts out 4 green belts. Let's see if we can see that in action. If we fill up the belts a bit, there we go. The red one is the slowest. Eventually it's full as well. Alright, so if you now take a closer look on here, we can see the 4 input belts are flowing uninterrupted, the 4 output belts are flowing uninterrupted. And there is no gaps in the transport lines, only here on the splitter, but that's internal stuff. There are no gaps on the actual belts. So that's pretty cool. Alright, so let's take a deeper dive into the pros and cons of each design. As said before, the simple horizontal belt weave is optimal in terms of storage density up to the point where you want to make a storage field of about 50,000 items in size. Beyond 50,000, the better orthogonal ones start to overtake the storage density of the simple horizontal belt weave. This one is if you want to boast about the maximum number of undergrounds going to a single tile, I suppose. We've got the OG checkerboard pattern, which looks very pleasing to the eye. So that could be a reason to use it, because you will probably spend some time looking at your designs as well. We've got the 4.4 one, which you can use if you want to put laser turrets in the middle for extra safety, or if you want a small tileable section of 10 by 10 tiles. The OG has 8 by 8 tiles even. The 4.5 has 20 by 20 tiles, so this is 4 by 4 stamps, but this is only 2 by 2 stamps. So this one a bit higher storage dense, but larger steps to tile. And then we've got these ones, the 4.666, 4.72 and 4.75-ish storage densities. If you put those on a ship, you probably want to go in the vertical orientation like so. So let's take a closer look at one of those books where the layout has been found by writing a script. They have a height of 10, a tileable height of 10 for a very specific reason, and that is that blue belts can span a maximum distance of 10 tiles, 8 underground tiles and 2 for the blue belts themselves. So by searching in a 10 high field, you can basically let the script search for anything horizontal, which works, and then you just add in blue and green belts in all the empty spaces, and you don't need to worry how they connect to each other, because the blue belts will automatically connect at the max distance, and the green belts will automatically connect at the maximum distance -2. So basically you search for the minimum amount of things to span horizontal while still keeping all 3 belt types in there, and then you just fill in the gaps with vertical blues and greens to get to the weirdly specific numbers of belts per tile you see in these books over here. So 4.7 improved upon 4.666 by just mixing up some of the red and blue belts, and then the current record holder of 4.756 belts per tile improves on that methodology by eliminating 2 red belts from the build. So instead of on all 5 horizontals having a red belt, now we have red belts on only 4 of the 5 pairs of horizontals. So that sacrifices a belt in 2 horizontal columns, but in return you get way more space for blue and green belts. And why that matters, we can best see if we have the entire things built. So this is 4.666. As you can see, there are plenty of gaps where there is no green or no blue belt, and we have to connect it like so to bridge that. But if we then eliminate 2 of the red belts, we get this one, and you can see there are blue belts everywhere and green belts are only missing 1 single spot, and we even have a gap in the center. If we could fit in another color of belt in here, We could have had 4.8, but alas, we cannot. This seems to be the current best we have. These science packs are just now arriving as well. So that's basically how this works. It has been suspected that the best results will be found if we are actually going to be looking in a field of 46 by 46 or 48 by 48, but that is pretty hard to script. Way harder than just look for horizontals and fill in the gaps with verticals. So still a work in progress that. Let's go separately over the throughput focused belt weaving, because that's kinda got a different blueprint book than all the others. So we got a central section, an input section, an output section, and some joints. Basically pretty similar to my own orthogonal belt weaving monstrosity. So let's take the central section. Let's say we want 4 copies. We put the input section on top of the top one, the output section on top of the bottom one, and then the joints we put them in between. And that is how you build this one. There's also some presets for this one. We got the 1 wide, 2 wide, 3 wide, 4 wide, which we have now. And then we've got the 8 wide one, which is the maximum that fits between 2 rows of connected RoboPorts. So that's everything that is in this book. I guess I haven't gone over how to actually use the books in detail just yet, which I will probably insert somewhere earlier in the video, as that was the intent of the video. So yeah, I guess, and this is gonna be the end for you. I'm just gonna record the front end of the video a little bit more, I suppose. Alright, so from 4.4 belts per tile and upwards, all of the books work the same and they have the exact same blueprint layout inside. Kind of standardized it from this point on. We did the 4.4 already, so let's do let's just do the best build. They all work the same, so we're gonna go over it again. You just make the center as many copies as you want. Let's say 5. Let's do 5 by 2. I should have put the blueprint book on the bar, like I explained earlier. So yeah, a 5 by 2 pattern is the smallest pattern, which gives you an average storage capacity of over 4 belts per tile, including the overhead we're about to place. So again, we use a 2 by 2 tile overlay in the corner, and then the corner fits here without shift clicking. You can place everything without shift clicking. The top right corner is not really needed, but you can skip this, but it's nice for orientation purposes. Then we have the bottom left, which has the cursed splitter mechanics, which is kind of a little bit different for every set, because the belts come out different in different kind of blueprints. So that is the 4 corners. Then we go to the top, south, west and east sections. Again, 2 tile overlay. You overlay this on top of the corner you just placed. So like so, not next to it. That won't work. So we place it here and drag it to the right. Right, bottom is the same. You overlay 2 tiles, it fits here. You can drag it. You overlay 2 tiles here as well, if you don't drag. Left as well. Place it with 2 tile overlay. Can be a little bit hard to see because of the arrows, but it should be pretty clear, the outside edge. The outside edges should line up, so the green line matches up with the outside of the belt, of the green belt over there. And this is where that corner comes in handy, because you can also see what the northernmost point should be to overlay. And that's it connected. And now everything, after a long time, let's make it a little bit less long, everything should meet up at the edges over here. So yeah, if we look at this specific blueprint, it has 4.074 belts per tile, including the overhead. I measured all of these by deleting the loaders and infinity chests after the belts were completely filled up, and then just having the bots deconstructed, count the tiles used, and count the actual items on the tiles. So the theoretical, okay, it's full already. The theoretical maximum has been calculated with these tiles counted as occupied, but for my tests I just counted the exact number of tiles stuff was on. So you could say you could do some pedantics and improve this by doing this, but that's not really super fair, I suppose. So I refrained from doing that. So we get 4.1 belts per tile average here with this 4x4 blueprinting, and that stores 300,000 items. So if you're looking to store a certain number of items, you can also browse through these blueprints a bit until you find one that matches the capacity you want. Or alternatively, if you're looking for something roughly the size I used on my actual spaceship, because this size is probably about the maximum size I would want to go with. If the spaceship is this wide, I would not want this tail end to be wider because of the asteroids coming in at an angle. You can basically paste this blueprint and then just grid something next to it. We'll just put it in the horizontal orientation, and then we'll just make something roughly the size of this thing. We need to keep a little bit of space for the overhead. Okay, so four copies is kinda probably will be a little bit wider than what I have over here, but 4 copies is good. And then for the length, it's like also 4 copies. Okay, so that is the 4x4 grid over here. I suppose we can paste that just on top of here. Alright, so it's slightly bigger than what I have on my spaceship. This is the actual size of the storage field. So we are a little bit wider, a little bit longer, but we are storing 300,000 items, whereas I was storing only 209,000 items at an average storage density of 3.4 belts per tile. Here we are 4.1 belts per tile, so it's a significant improvement. And we have space for laser turrets as well in the gaps, I suppose. So yeah, for now that is the best solution we have. Excited to see what the limit is. I know the hard limit is... Alright, so we know there is a hard limit on the amount of belts per tile that we can achieve. And that limit is 5.066666 belts per tile. Actually that is an overestimation, because that is calculated by basically having every type of belt be extended to its maximum distance, like so. So if you now look at this, if you now look at the green belts, you can see it uses 1 space and then it leaves 5 spaces open, and then it uses another space. So this uses 1 in 6 spaces to cross. Same for the blue belt, it uses 1 in 5, and the red belt uses 1 in 4. So if we want to cross green, horizontal and vertical, we want to cross blue, horizontal and vertical, and we want to cross red. Red is next on the list. Let's say horizontal. Now we are using 1 in every 6 tiles for this one, 1 in every 5 tiles for this one, 1 in every 4 tiles for this one. And if you add it all up, you end up at 98.33333% of all tiles being used. And that is if all the belts can extend to the maximum distance all of the time, which is obviously not going to be the case as they will overlap. You will need to make some sacrifices to have belts not be on the same tile. For instance, for this sequence over here, we would have to sacrifice red to go over here, not using the maximum distance, and then maybe again over here. Alternatively, we can do blue, but the result is the same. We need to make some sacrifices. The 5.0666 number comes from just adding the remaining 1.6% space with another copy of red. So yeah, 5 belts per tile would use up 98.33% of all available space if tiled out optimally all the time, which is unrealistic, impossible even. So the actual number of belts per tile will be definitely lower than 5.06, but expected to be around 4.8. We'll see what the future brings. So yeah, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoy this monstrosity of a blueprint book. It's kind of like the belt balancer book, but for belt weaving, and a lot less useful than the belt balancer book, I suppose. But anyway, that was all I have for you today. Thanks for watching, and I will see you all next time.